Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the MSP Initiative, MSP Talk. We are on November 16th, 2023, and like literally sub 45 days before you hit New Year's Eve in whatever part of the world you're at and just go wild, which also means that there's a lot of stuff to be done. Kind of short period of time, before we got to reset and, boot up for another year. That being said, let's get some housekeeping out of the way because, that's how we do things on this. So mspinitiative.com, try and spell initiative. If you can't, go to Google, they'll spell check you, put that together, and you have our website. This session is being recorded. It will be posted here under sessions in both podcast and video format. So, whichever works best for you. Stay tuned for events that we'll be talking about next year, including more MSP Community Minds. And our guest speaker today was actually at this event in Denver early this year, and we really loved the outcome of this. Kind of changed the game. Less trade show floor and more actual learning together on both sides of the aisle, which I think is like a really cool outcome. So we'll talk more about Community Minds. Thank you for everyone that came out to any of these block parties this year, right? We did some in Europe. We did some here in the U.S. side. And we closed it out last week at IT Nation with not one, but three radio recognizable bands. All of our stuff is actually posted. So if you hit MSP Initiative on Facebook, you'll see all the photos, a recap video. If you go to past parties here, you'll go to MSP Block Party Orlando, and you'll see that we posted like a recap and, all the photo albums and stuff are posted here. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to do these really cool events. I know everybody loves trade shows, but sometimes we need to do different things outside of the normal blueprint. And this is definitely one that's been awesome for the community. Of course, we have some community offers. These are just companies that have thrown some deals in here for you. And then we have our industry calendar, which we're about to post all the 2024 dates that we have in our grasp, which it's got to get somewhere between 250 and 300 events for sure. It's an event-driven industry, guys. Sorry, kind of busy. So anyway, mspinitiative.com. This is where you can find everything that we are planning, working on, any stuff we've done in the past. It's all in one place. There it is. That is officially the housekeeping. And without further ado, our special guest speaker for this session is Ole. That's what we'll put a little French accent on there for you from Trunorth Dynamics. So what'd you think of last week, man? I know IT Nation is like everybody converges on it, right? Like it's like the closing event, I feel almost like for the industry every year.
It is. Now it's interesting. I've been going to the event for 13, 14 years. It's been a while. And, it's been quite the adventure. It's changed over the years from back in the Bonnet Creek in early days to the Hyatt and now over at the Shingle Creek. And obviously for most of those years, I was there as an MSP, there to learn, going to the sessions. And now the last 2 years, I've been there as a sponsor, and it's very different. So in some ways, it was actually not a good event for us, not because IT Nation is not a good event per se. It's a well-run event. I mean, they've been doing it for a long time. It's a fun event. There's a lot of cool stuff. But with their new booths where it's all pre-printed, everybody kind of looks the same, minus some graphics, you kind of become a little anonymous. It's not as interesting and as exciting and as I think it kind of used to be. I mean, obviously there's pros and cons, but it was cool to be there. I mean, it was a fun event, and I also got to bring the wife and kids, so we stayed a little extra to do some Universal, other fun things. But so overall it was good, but it was interesting because from a pure sponsorship side, it probably actually did not turn out to be a very good event for us. Overall, it'll be fine because we had some interesting strategic conversations and that kind of stuff, which in the end will probably make it worth it. But it was just interesting.
Well, I mean, listen. This is the constant, and we always talk about this, right? On this side of the aisle, right? The risk versus reward, the house always wins, kind of theme, right? Like casinos always get the upper hand. There's a serious amount of capital, time, investment into a lot of these events. And there's been from both sides, right? From the attendee side and their expectation, the vendor side what their expectation is. I mean, the person running the event, the company running the event, like really gets the most shine, right? And then like they're funding a lot of the event through the rest of the people that are coming in to throw money in the pot. We get that. Like what you get for your money can drastically change, right? From one event to the next. So like for all the people out there that are like, hey, I hate getting phone calls, I hate getting spammed, I hate this, and I'm like, dude, guys, get it, but like these events probably don't happen anywhere near the size or the quality if funds aren't available to do it. Like I always say, we need to meet in the middle somewhere, right? Like there needs to be a win-win, right? Either the cost of the event needs to come down so your risk goes down, but it seems like it goes up. It never comes down. Or
Definitely keeps going up.
and then you as an attendee don't come back if you don't take something away, right? Did you learn something? Did you meet somebody new? What did you get out of it to progress your business? And like there needs to be learning in the middle of all of that, not just buy stuff, right? So like there's always a balance. And I feel like for some of these events for many years, I'm not naming names, there's been a dramatic imbalance, right? Like to the point where the attendee doesn't feel like they got anything out of it. The sponsor didn't get anything out of it. And like there's a lose-lose, right? And instead of a three-way win, there is a two-way loss. So, so many times the words show fatigue, too many events, like all of that conversations come up. And there's probably, excuse me, some truth to that, right? Like if you really wanted to, could you be on the road every week of the year and then go to an event or two? Yes, the answer is yes. Like, can you run your business that way? Absolutely not. Unless you're gonna like take somebody out of the office every time, right? Somebody different. What? Yeah. So since we're on the topic, and then we'll get into other things. From your opinion, where you stand now, you've been an MSP, you've now been a vendor, so now you've seen things from both sides. I think that's a good level of experience for you to answer the question. What to you, from each side, attendee versus sponsor of an event, is considered successful to you?
Well, but that's tricky because you kind of put it out. I mean, there's hundreds of events a year, and how do you create a triple win, right? Somebody has to put on the show, and they take the risk of actually, this more than anything, putting on a party that's costs a lot of money. Now you got to get enough sponsors and have it not become salesy and all that kind of fun stuff. And so, because vendors have to sell, because they're spending somewhere between $10,000 and $150,000, depending on, actually sometimes probably more. Actually, no, guaranteed more than that.
Would you be, so I'm not trying to call them out, but they're a big spender on the circuit. So like, let's say somebody like a Threat Locker who takes the very top spot available, right? It could be 300,000. And by the way, they gave away a car. So like, like not everybody has access to that type of spend, right?
I'm one of those.
Love Threat Locker. You guys do a great job. Not picking on you, but like when you have a lot of money to spend, you're going to spend it. And like, obviously hopefully you're getting your return on that type of spend, but I digress.
Yeah. It's a real challenge, because how do you make it educational? Because ultimately people are there to learn. Now, some of it's networking, some of it's community. You get to see old friends that you haven't seen in a long time. But it all has to create value in some way. Not always financially necessarily, but as a vendor, you kind of do need, right? You're spending, tens of thousands of dollars on a show. You have to figure out how do you ROI that in some way. And it's getting really challenging because like you said, the prices keep going up. But as an attendee too, I've been to the channel company events where you're hosted, and it's a grind as an attendee. You get sold to all day, every day for 2.5 days. That it kind of sucks. Like it's a brutal kind of event, but it's also kind of helpful because you get exposed to vendors that you don't necessarily normally get exposed to. And you have like an IT Nation, which is, you get sold to from a standpoint of there's the solution pavilion and that kind of stuff. But then they obviously do their sessions. This year, I actually didn't go to any sessions. So I can't necessarily speak to that. But but there's so many shows. How do you decide what to go to from an attendee standpoint? And then from a sponsor, you only have so much money. Where do you spend your money? We're not a traditional vendor. In fact, I hate to even call ourselves a vendor because we're really not. We're really more of a partner with MSPs. And nobody really understands what we do. In fact, we got a question a few times at IT Nation is like, why in the world are you here? This doesn't make any sense. Now, if they come and talk to us and we get to explain, even if it's, 3 minutes, they're like, oh, actually, that kind of does make sense. But we have this dual challenge of, until we can explain it to them, they don't know why they should come and talk to us, but they won't come and talk to us because they don't know what we're there for. So it's a real challenge. So
it's an education challenge, right?
It is definitely an education challenge, but that's why, your comment about MSP Community Minds is kind of interesting in the sense that how do we make these shows truly educational? And I'm not saying the veiled sponsor, pitch, which is, pretty much a sales pitch with, some slight education thing, but actually sharing true, real knowledge and yeah, it's a real challenge. And,
I believe, to kind of round out the thought here, I believe the reason every year more and more events show up into the global industry calendar is because at some point a glass ceiling is hit. You're like, this has now gone past the ability of making sense. And then you're like, I'm just going to go and try and do it on my own. And then all of a sudden, it's like multiplying, right? And then everybody realizes the struggle of what it takes to get people to a place, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely, this circle of life. I really, at the end of the day, if we could facilitate a conversation between the major event holders and everyone else, and instead of just here's the menu, choose what you can afford, have an actual conversation about what makes sense and what doesn't. I think some movement could be made, but like anything, there needs to be two parties willing to have that conversation. I would say from an attendee standpoint, obviously you're doing business with companies that you use to run your business, and it makes sense for you to keep up with those people. But, you also need to find value to continue leaving your office. And to the hosted guest model that you mentioned with CRN, if somebody's offering you a free trip, probably much more willing to go down that road than dropping a couple grand out of my pocket, right? I mean, like just how it works, right? So catch 22. I would say that the average MSP owner or decision maker or executive, maybe they get out of the office 3-4 times a year, right? Like reasonably. I would say that's once you get past that point, they're a professional event goer. And at that point, they're going just to, kind of network with everybody else anyway. It doesn't matter where it is. I would really like to, and we take our shot at it, right? Change the blueprint a little bit, right? Change the way that everybody's been Xeroxing all these events for 20 years. And break down what seems like artificial separation, right? And I think that's a problem. So I digress. That's my 2 cents. I know we went down a philosophical conversation, but let's get back to Trunorth, right? So you said, hey, a lot of people ask you, why do you even come here? Or what is the purpose? Why did you set up this new entity? What was your answer to that question?
So I'll tell a little bit of the story, kind of where we came from, because I think that'll help set the stage. So I've been in MSP IT services for 20 some years, MSP since 2012. Some mergers and things in those 20 years. But anyway, so 2012 we started True IT with my other business partners, Zach Paulson, I know, who's been on here, and Wes Henry. And so we grew that over the years. In 2018, one of our clients actually was a Dynamics company in Fargo, North Dakota. They went to a failed acquisition. The earnest check actually bounced, which is kind of insane. I don't know how that's been possible, but neither here nor there. They'd already made all the changes to the business. A bunch of people had been laid off. so they were kind of in a, what do we do? Like, we already changed all this stuff because of the acquisition. So we ended up acquiring the company at the time, and we had this vision. We're going to create a combined infrastructure help desk, MSP with business applications. We can help everything from normal help desk, computer stuff into business applications, the CRM, the accounting software. It's going to be amazing. Yeah, that sounds really good in theory. In practice, that did not really work out. So
I just want to make sure I heard this right. You went through a due diligence, you did an acquisition, you started merging both sides, and then the check bounced.
So that was a different company was going to acquire this Dynamics practice, and then that fell apart. And then they came to us and they're like, what do we do? And we're like, well, I mean, we can acquire you. This sounds like a cool opportunity. So here's the really dumb part of this. They were bigger than we were, both in revenue and number of people. That is never a good idea. I would probably never do that. Actually, no, I would definitely never do that again. In hindsight, it was a terrible idea. But honestly, it's worked out really great, right? I mean, in 2019, about a year and a half later, we were pretty close to going under. Probably should have. We're just really stubborn. We made all the necessary changes to kind of get through it. But then COVID hits. And, the Dynamics company was mostly remote. There was a few people in the office in Fargo. The MSP was fully in office. Obviously, we'd always had an office. And that's also where a little bit of the culture thing comes in. But we were struggling with, the people are different that you're hiring for MSP versus a business application company. It's just a kind of different set of people. And so combining this and getting that culture to really mesh, doubling that with a lot of those remote versus in office, we just had a lot of challenges. And I think then COVID hit and we're like, this isn't working. Like, this isn't having that, 1 + 1 = 3 that we were looking for. It was a 1 + 1 = 1.5, which is really not a good math problem. And so we're looking at it, we're like, no, these should be different companies. So I happen to work really well.
Let me pause you right there.
Yeah.
100% agree that the makeup and the people that make up an IT services company and a software or a SaaS company or software development company, it couldn't be diametrically opposite. It is absolutely two completely separate practices, skill sets, the whole thing. Like, the only thing you could borrow, other than like every company needs some back office, right? HR, accounting. The only other thing you could borrow is, like, if there were some front end help desk requirements on this side, you could maybe borrow a person or two. That's it. Like, it is completely not the same business.
Definitely have experienced that firsthand, very much so. So then we're like, what do we do? And we're like, no, we should split this back up. And for me, I really enjoyed working with the consulting group. It just fit me really well. So we ended up splitting into companies. So I went off and took over the business application side of things, and my other business partner stayed with MSP. And so that was in April of 2021 is when we kind of separated from a running standpoint. And then 2022, Trunorth was born as a separate, entity and a different branding and that kind of stuff. Since then, the MSP has been sold off to another group. So, after 20 years, a little bittersweet in some ways, right? You do something for 20 years of your life, and then, you sell it off and that kind of stuff. But I was ready to be done. I mean, MSP is
it's a hard business.
It's a hard business.
I don't care how big you or how small you are. It is not a turnkey. Like, if you were to go buy a franchise, for example, a lot of work's already been done for you. That is not the case here. It is an actual, like, you have to be in that business in order for it to work.
It's a grind. It's 24/7 in a lot of ways. And it's even worse now with all the ransomware stuff. Like, it's tough. And I'm very happy to be done with it. I'm in 2 years in recovery from MSP. But it was a good thing because it got to separate the companies. As Trunorth, we're fully remote. I got to move from Fargo, North Dakota to Denver, Colorado. Way better weather, at least comparably, winter-wise. So it's kind of overall been really good. So now we have people in 11 states. So we're kind of spread out throughout the country, and so it's been kind of been a long road, but it was really the best thing we did. Since then, we've thrived. We do a lot of things. But to answer your question, because I know that was a long story to kind of get your question, is like, why in the world is Trunorth at IT Nation? Because it's not an MSP. The reality is, so one of the challenges that Microsoft really wants to get into the SMB market, particularly with Dynamics. So everything from CRM to Business Central on the accounting side, they really want to get into the SMB. Well, Microsoft is really terrible at SMB, and they know they are too. But so their solution is to tell everyone that transacts CSP to go sell a bunch of Dynamics. Well, just go sell it. It's easy. You just go do it. Well, to your point, the people that are doing, business applications, implementation, customization, support is typically a completely different set of people, and it's a different challenge. And MSPs already have enough stuff on their plate, between obviously just a help desk and infrastructure, knock, to obviously now with security and everything else.
For most MSPs or IT services companies that even qualify, which almost everybody does, for Action Pack, right? Like they've since changed the tiers above that, but Action Pack's still around, and almost everybody has it. You used to get Dynamics like I still think you do. Some version of it is included in Action Pack, and like I know people, myself included, in the early days of IT MSP land, you would fake use Dynamics as a ticketing system, right? And like before the ConnectWises and Autotasks and all those guys got really popular, like you would do this, right? Because it's free, you know what I mean? Then you found out this thing isn't very easy to customize at all. It's so rigid unless you have like coding resources, like, or you went and bought some third-party plugin somewhere. What you see is what you get, right? Like it's not that simple outside of the box to make changes. And like, you hear about, I would say like HubSpot and NetSuite are very popular, right? And like you hear about people spending, forget the software monthly recurring costs, subscription, the cost to get onboarded, right? Like I know people who have onboarded Salesforce for a pretty small team, let's call it 20 people. They're 250, 300 grand in on customizations, implementation, onboarding, and they haven't even, they haven't even turned the lights on. And I'm like, wow, it's pretty intense, investment there, and you didn't even know if it works yet. The idea that the MSP has time to worry about the plumbing and the security and the rest of the stuff they're doing, and even think about that, it's not real, right? Like forget that. It's like don't even bother to go down that road.
100%, and we found that out the hard way. It's very different, and we lost focus on the MSP side. So then the MSP started losing revenue because we were really focused on this new thing. So you now you kind of go back and forth, and you're never really highly successful. And so, whatever your core business is, you need to be hyper focused on that. Doesn't mean you can't do some other stuff that's kind of surrounding, but you got to be really careful, because anything you add, in most cases, will atrophy your core business. Well, if that's where you make all your money, ask me how I know. We found that the hard way. And but so Microsoft wants everybody to do this. So the question is, how does that work? Because if MSPs don't have the internal knowledge and skill sets to deploy this kind of stuff, how do you do that? And that's where we come in, is that we partner with MSPs to help do this for their clients. We do give a part of the top line revenue back to MSP as kind of the bonus or commission, if you will. And that's on all revenue, for the life of the customer, as long as they're also a customer of the MSP. So it's kind of a win-win, right? I mean, we get to drive lots of business. The MSP still gets to make basically 10% net profit for essentially doing nothing. And they're involved with everything from just a warm handoff to, here's a client that needs something, go talk to them, to where they're involved with the meetings, that kind of stuff. We really want to be involved with it because MSPs should be there for the strategic guidance for technology. And that includes business applications. Now, that doesn't mean you have to know everything about it. It just means need to know what the clients have issues with. They're running into problems with it. They're outgrowing QuickBooks, for example, and need something better. Or, they have a sales team and they're tracking everything in Excel, and they really want to have better data reporting and processes and that kind of stuff. And so, because of the background, I know all MSPs are going to be different. Some want to be heavily involved, some would be non-involved, and we can kind of accommodate any of that kind of stuff. And so it's a win-win-win, because now Microsoft and distributors gets what they want, selling Dynamics licenses. The MSP is controlling the controllables, guiding that conversation to a partner that they can trust, that isn't going to take their Azure business and MS365 business and that kind of stuff away, and kind of help reinforce the things that they do. Because for us, all we do is Dynamics. I learned the hard way through MSP. It's so easy to you start adding this stuff, and then you add that stuff, you do some Azure, and then you sell this stuff, and then you do this other stuff, and suddenly you're selling 20 things, and you're good at like one or two of them. And so we want to be laser focused. And so that's kind of the problem that we're trying to solve. Is
kind of the whole bit. Let's be honest, right? The average, and this number, like, go back 5 years, 10 years, the number used to be smaller. Today, I believe that the average number of third-party things that you roll into your, whether the MSP sees it on an invoice or you're just pulling it in as a tool to deliver the service, is like 40 to 50 things.
Yeah.
Like,
which is a
and
lot.
that's not an unrealistic number. I think that's kind of the average.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no way the majority of people out there delivering that bundle of 40 to 50 things have in-house experts to cover every angle. No, 100% no. And like, here's the thing. Going down this thought pattern that you're talking about, a lot of MSPs, when they adopt these customers net new, referral, whatever, they're not experts in the line of business app that the end customer is using, right? Like, if you go into a doctor's office, how many MSPs are an expert in the EHR for the doctor? Not many.
Not many.
Or you go into a company that has a team that's already using Salesforce. Are you going to go into Salesforce and customize it? No. You're going to make sure that the security's there, and that if you can back it up, you will. But who do you call when there's a problem? Let me know, and I'll put that into my workflow. That's it. Like, so I guess the big question is, I'm curious to hear the stats from you. Obviously, this has turned into a business, or else you wouldn't be spending money and trying to grow it. But how many MSPs are able to even pitch, hey, instead of going to buy one of the competitive products, why don't you look at the Microsoft solution? Like, are they able to even deliver that idea?
So no, most don't. And there's several reasons for that. One of them is just, what does Gary Picker call it? The reactive spiral of death of MSPs. It's just a day-to-day chaos. You already have 20 other things to talk to the clients about, whether it's through the VCR process or account management, whatever the case may be. They just don't have the time, the knowledge, and that kind of stuff to even broach those conversations. So more often than not, right now, the leads are going to be where the client knows they want Dynamics. They've either heard about it, or they're like, I want Business Central for my accounting. I want Dynamics sales, for my CRM and that kind of stuff.
I'm going to pause you for a second. I would say 9.5 out of 10 people who work in a technology company, IT companies, or MSP, have never heard the words Business Central. Can you just for 10 seconds explain what that is?
Thank you. I appreciate that, because it's it's Microsoft, so they're always acronyms and naming. So Business Central is to your point about Dynamics and the complexity of customization, that kind of stuff. So Dynamics is actually more like a platform. I think it was like SharePoint. Out of the box, it's okay. If you have the expertise to customize it, it could be amazing, but it's not out of the box. Dynamics is kind of the same situation. So there's actually Dynamics, or the Power Platform, which is kind of the base of all of this stuff, which is really truly a platform. You can build anything on top of it, including mobile apps. Then there's the Dynamics applications on top of that. So there's like sales, what used to be called marketing, which is kind of like HubSpot, if you will. Business Central is their SMB accounting software. They call it SMB ERP. I think that's being very generous. It's really an accounting software. And then above that, on the enterprise level, they have what they used to call F&O. Now it's just called finance, which is hyper complex and that kind of stuff. So Business Central is their accounting software for essentially the MSP end user, market, if you will.
So I'm leaving Peachtree, QuickBooks, Xero, any of those, like anything in that category, and this would be the Microsoft equivalent to that.
Yeah, it is that next step. So QuickBooks Enterprise is kind of in that same market, right? You use the QuickBooks Zeros, whatever, and then you go to this kind of mid-market space, and then above that you go to SAP, the crazy, NetSuite, finance, with Microsoft and that kind of stuff. So the one challenge, though, it is real accounting software. So QuickBooks, you could kind of do whatever you want. You created an invoice and you're like, oh crap, I messed it up. You could just delete it and then make a new one. Well, in real accounting software, you actually can't do that because everything has to be auditable.
Okay, so who would be the correct target for this? Like, it's not going to be the 1 to 10 employee QuickBooks user, right? You're talking about what?
So I would probably say that 20 to 25 user and up into the mid-market. So a few thousand employees can use Business Central. And if it's a fast-growing company, that's a really good spot for it. If they have compliance of any kind, particularly related to the finance, they pretty much have to, because QuickBooks is not auditable really in any way, shape, or form. So it's like the larger, fully managed clients into co-managed is the perfect kind of market for that product.
All right. So the idea is Microsoft gets you at the base, right? Microsoft 365, Office 365, right? Those base subscriptions that everybody's using. And then they're like, well, you've already made an investment with Microsoft at the plumbing level. And then you get maybe some Azure pops up, right? Azure Virtual Desktop, Azure servers, that kind of thing. All right. So now we got the infrastructure side going. And then they're like, let's talk about line of business pieces, right? And they're like, we have marketing, we have accounting, we have, if you get into a true like operational, like ERP, like I'm running my manufacturing or something through that. So like what they're trying to do is like start you off drinking the Kool-Aid and then graduate you as your business grows.
100%. And that's really the power of Dynamics, is that it can't necessarily go into the super small business, but it can go into fairly small business and it can grow with you into the mid-market. And few companies become enterprise companies, so that's not necessarily a concern. So, but it can really grow with you. You can start simple. You could use it mostly out of the box and not use all the functionality. And over time, you can then expand the use of it, whether it's customization or out of the box. So it's really hyper flexible. And that's really one of the cool parts is, everybody always asks like, well, what business, what kind of vertical is it good for? Well, really anyone, because it's a generalized business software. Now, if you're a dentist, there's a lot of business software that, whether it's good or not, that's maybe, a different conversation, but probably makes more sense because it fits your business. It's very specific. There's things that it does that would be very expensive to kind of build on top of Dynamics. But we can essentially build anything on top of Dynamics. And we have for a variety of businesses that, like, one of our bigger clients is they're a insurance broker training and certification company. So insurance brokers has to go and train, right, on insurance stuff and get certified to sell insurance. That's a pretty specific business. There's not really any software that does that. So literally they use everything from sales and marketing on the CRM side to Business Central for accounting. They use Power Pages, which is the portal side. So the people that go and do the training to log into the portal, to do the training, it's all stored in what Microsoft calls the Dataverse. And now they can use Power BI to now report on everything from their sales funnel into the operations of their business and who's taking certifications and all that kind of stuff. And it's really cool for businesses that have those kind of interesting needs where there is no software that's going to do this. You may be able to get specific parts, but now none of the parts talk to each other. So they can have a cohesive system that actually all is in the same spot, cohesive data, And then to your point, it integrates with your Office 365, your email, your Teams, and now, of course, everybody's favorite topic, Copilot. It kind of becomes a no-brainer if you can afford to do it. Now, that's fairly expensive to do that because you're talking
I was
fairly
going to
big
say,
event.
you came upon a trendy word, but to the average IT MSP who's probably not dealing with organizations more than 200 employees, probably less, I don't think they can even use Copilot right now. I think somebody say it's like a 300 user minimum. Like it's a pretty heavy investment.
Well, so Copilot is becoming very interesting because apparently Microsoft has now decided to kind of label everything Copilot. So you have Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is the one that you mentioned, where in Word and Excel you can use that. That one currently is essentially enterprise only because you need 300 users. But then you have what used to be Bing Enterprise Chat is now being rebranded Copilot. They have their virtual power agent, which is the chat bot for Dynamics, is now called Copilot Studio. So it's going to get really interesting and complicated to talk about it because Copilot now is going to mean a lot of different things to different people. But like anything, complexity and that kind of stuff is actually the opportunity to then help people navigate that complexity, which obviously is where we come in.
Yeah, I think the Copilot messaging has been, hey, this is how we're competing with ChatGPT and all this other stuff. But then it was like a pretty big, hey, this is too expensive for us to even look at. Call us when the flat screen TV is now 250, not 2,500, right? Like, hopefully over time it comes down. But like this whole AI thing has become the wild, wild west. Like everybody just has adopted this terminology that it's kind of like when cloud first came out, right? It's like, what is that? What does that even mean, right? Like everybody's just using it in their marketing because it's the hot button. AI, automation, hyper automation. It's like, is it practical? Is it affordable? Can I actually get there? Kind of feels like the answer is no. So
right now, I think it is. It's going to become useful, and like anything else, for a while it was the augmented reality. VR was supposed to be the cool new thing that is like,
and that went absolutely nowhere, man. Like
pretty
nobody
much
using that.
So I think AI is going to be more than that, but it's going to get to the point where there's tools that are useful, but they're really just tools like anything else. It's not going to replace everybody's jobs. It's not going to become, Skynet overnight or possibly ever, but it's going to become useful. It helps you. It's like we all have that moment when we need to respond to an email that made us mad, and we're like, you type out the angry email. It's like, yeah, maybe just ask, Copilot to write that email for you because it'll probably come across much nicer. So there's going to be useful things, things that it just makes it quicker, easier. There's going to be automation that comes to that, but it's not going to be magical. That's kind of what the marketing says now. It's magical. Well, maybe one day, but right now it can be useful. So like Business Central, the accounting software does have Copilot, but currently it is limited to writing essentially when you add products to your catalog in your accounting software, it will help you write the descriptions. Okay, that's cool. Well, but it's not like you're doing that all the time, right? I mean, that's a pretty rare thing. Eventually it will do more, but that's kind of where we are. We are really version 0.1 of AI when it comes to this kind of stuff.
So it's kind of like ChatGPT kind of just forced the agenda. Everybody just very quickly threw out whatever they had. And like, even if it doesn't really do much, hey, I have something. Yeah, look over here. There was a lot of this talked about at IT Nation, by the way, right? Like, what does the future look like? And there wasn't a lot to talk about today, right? Like, I couldn't even show you anything. But in a year from now, it was a little weird actually. But I would say that kind of like the security products, right? Like, there's so many of them now, and everybody doesn't understand like all of the layers of security. So sometimes they're overlapping products. They overspend almost because they just don't know. This is kind of even above that now, right? There's just like the words sound great on a PowerPoint slide, but in reality, what is it actually helping? So I don't know. I digress. Obviously, over time, I'm sure it'll mature a little bit, but it could take a few years before it's tangible, I think.
I think it will take some time, but like everything, it starts as kind of the cool, exciting design stuff, and then kind of reality hits, and it starts, there starts becoming pieces that are helpful. So I think at this point, I don't think anybody should overly worry about the AI stuff, the Copilot. There's maybe some specific things, things like data, security. Don't tell ChatGPT all your business secrets, things like that. But those are kind of tangential. Is that a word? Surrounding things. Yeah. But as for an MSP, at this point, I think it's mostly kind of wait and see. When client asks for it, honestly, more often than not, the answer is it's super cool, but I don't know that you really need to spend time on it and that kind of stuff. Particularly right now, like for an MSP, security really should be everybody's number one priority, because it's completely getting out of control. And you have, in fact, it's interesting. It's shifted. Going to shows, you see this, the vendors of the shows kind of shifts over time, and now it's like it's 80% security and 20% automation. But to your point, I mean, there's a million tools. Do you really need all these tools? More often than not, you're better off picking fewer tools and being really, really good at making sure that it actually does, what it's supposed to, and that kind of stuff. And that's always my kind of advice to MSPs is be really good at your core business and partner with other companies who do all those things. Like, we're not the be end of all of partnerships for MSPs. We fulfill a very small part of this market, right? I mean, you should be partnering with, for security, either you need to hire the people internally to be really good at it, or work with a whole bunch of solutions granted. There's a lot of Blackpoint Security. There's a lot of other vendors in the market that can do that does one thing, and they're hopefully really good at it. And so for us, as we see, as like whether it's your VCA or account management, when this stuff comes up, you bring in the partner to do it, and day to day, you don't really worry about it. It's not like Trunorth needs to be in everybody's mind all the time, or even Dynamics, because it's just not the case. But it's gonna come up when they're outgrowing their accounting software, or they're running into issues with their business. Or you mentioned manufacturing, that's a really common one. You have manufacturing clients, almost all of them use super old, terrible software, and there's really, really good options that can get expensive, but it doesn't necessarily have to be expensive.
Well, one thing's for sure. MSP tries to be all things to all people, but as we know, that usually ends in failure. I agree with you 1000%. You need to offload certain things to outside parties to even be able to concentrate on the things that you do the best internal to your company. To some degree, you're kind of like a gatekeeper to many things behind you, but you cannot be jack of all trades, master of none, or else you almost become obsolete to some degree because you can't keep up with it. I'm gonna go a different angle because it kind of feeds into this, right? Like you have good old Arnie Bellini, right? Made this announcement. Hey, February, coming back to the scene. MSP market is broken. Nothing's really progressed in the last 5 years. I'm coming back to try and fix that. I actually thought, I sat down and I was like, I'm gonna rewind 5 years. What's happened in the last 5 years? A lot more security solutions that didn't exist. 100%. I was like, but a lot of the stuff that was happening 5 years ago, pretty much still happening the same way today, right? Like it hasn't really changed on a lot of categories, but there are some net new things that, like companies have popped up to start solving needs that 5 years ago didn't have an answer for them, or a good one. And we always tell ourselves we're in the technology space where it's moving so fast. You can't even keep up with, the bleeding edge, right, of all the net new stuff. So like I feel like it's a 50-50. I agree with half of it. I don't agree with half of it. I want to dig your opinion. Does the concept of like the last 5 years has really just been the same thing over and over again? Nothing's really changed in the MSP land. Do you agree with that message?
So I'd probably kind of give the same answer you. I sort of agree with it, but I sort of don't, right? I mean, if you look at the company's been around for a long time, ConnectWise, the Kaseya's, they haven't really changed a lot in the last 5 years, right? They're trying to come up with both, kind of new products to kind of solve the problem, but they're struggling. Now you have the new players in the Halos and the Synchros and that kind of stuff, or Super Ops. I think it kind of is true. I mean, there really isn't amazingly better tools today than there were 5 years ago. Well, that seems kind of crazy. If you think about technology and software development and how much more automation and that kind of stuff we can do, it should be easier than it is. If you look at Intune is super cool, right? I mean, it's not yet a replacement for an RMM, but there's parts of the RMM world that it replaces, and it's far better for partly because Microsoft accesses stuff that nobody else does. But it's a lot of work. It's difficult to do. I'll pick on us as an example. We're a fully remote company. We don't have any servers. We don't have any, we're fully Azure AD. But yet it's really difficult to have like true control over all that kind of stuff. And it should be easy. It should be a button and it's kind of out of the box. I don't know if there's anybody solving that. I know Nerdio is trying to kind of solve this problem, but it's super interesting to me that these RMMs don't kind of lean into this problem more. They kind of are stuck a little bit in the old, everybody has an office with servers and firewalls and that kind of stuff. It's not really true anymore. And even if they'll have an office, they're going to have remote employees. But it doesn't seem like the tools have joined even now, not even the future. So I think there's actually a really interesting opportunity for some of these companies to do something unique. I'm not aware of any of them actually, doing it. Maybe Arnie is the solution to all of our problems. I guess I don't know.
I mean, yeah, for what it's worth, right? I mean, the concept of ecosystem kind of morphed into a little bit marketplace, but I digress. Depends who you talk to. The idea that all these pieces can touch each other and integrate together was always the marketing message, right? That was the what we were sold, the idea. And I feel like some of that was just paper, right? Like didn't turn out to be totally true. How many times did you hear the words single pane of glass? Every time. I still don't think we've ever seen it.
No.
How many times did you hear, oh, you're going to be able to do 3x more with the same people by just using this tool? Like everybody pitches these efficiency and, hey, you could be a 2,500 endpoint MSP with only 3 people, right? I think I've only seen it 1 time or 2 times, right? Like, and by the way, those 3 people were developers practically. I think at the end of the day, the idea that the MSP becomes obsolete, I don't think that's true. I think technology is just more complicated actually than it was before. Somebody needs to manage it. And quite frankly, I don't care if you're an internal IT admin, or you're an MSP, you're really a very big vendor manager. That's what I think you are. And then, because you just can't do everything yourself. It's nonsense to think otherwise. How good you are at being able to project manage and balance multiple things at once is how successful you are or not. You have to really rely on strong, reliable, people who deliver on time, on budget, outside partners. That's what I call them, partners. Otherwise, I think you don't sleep. I think you hear all the horror stories, right? No vacation, 2:00 in the morning, all that stuff is true. Absolutely true.
100%.
I think at the end of the day, like we always talk about the stickiness factor, right? Like the more you can be involved with in the decision-making level, the more you're integrated into your customer's business. Your category is a very like almost like a strategic category, right? Like you would be convincing your customer, your end customer, to go down Microsoft lane rather than, and again, we said it, the Salesforce, the HubSpots, the NetSuites, like there's a lot of companies out there that kind of fit these categories at an enterprise level, but at an enterprise price, right? Like that's the problem, like the solution may be out there, but can you afford it? That's always the big question. When you get brought into these opportunities, can you even give them an idea on math, or is it so customer by customer specific you almost need to do a deep dive before you can give them a ballpark?
Oh, it's one of the most common questions I get. The answer is in most cases we could give a pretty good idea because now it depends on the how realistic the client is going to be, right? Like if you want crazy custom stuff, it's going to be more expensive. And if you're going to do anything other than mostly out of the box, I mean, it could be relatively complex with, customer service on the ticketing and to field service that's like rolling trucks and that kind of stuff. You're looking at 100 grand plus for anything that's like custom. Like you want white glove service, everything's taken care of for you and that kind of stuff. And that's where most Dynamics is today. Even for us, that's our better butter, right? We do projects that are 100,000, 50 to 100,000 is kind of where it starts, up to about $1 million. Those are great, but most smaller businesses are never going to write you a check for 100 grand. Like it's just not going to happen. So it's a problem, so the business that we acquired, that's what they did for almost 20 years. So one of the things that my driver is, we have to find ways to make this more affordable, because smaller businesses can use these tools with the right guidance, with the right training, but it needs to be a little bit more automatic, a little bit more, automation around the deployment, a little bit more, structured training and that kind of stuff. So I won't share all of it, but more to come. But we do have products now that will get the starting point to be more that $5,000 to $10,000 range. And obviously you can grow from there if you want more things and more custom things around that, but you can start there and then you can build on it over time. So you can budget 10 grand now, you can budget 10 grand in 6 months, and maybe you jump to 50 grand because you're like, oh, sweet, I can do all of this stuff. I can solve all these problems in my business, but now you can budget for it down the road. And that's, Bam Boom Cloud did an element of this for Business Central that obviously got acquired by Pax8. But this could be applying to really all of Dynamics. There's no reason this can't work for everyone. And so that is one area we've spent a lot of time, and the product pieces are pretty much ready. Now it's into go to market and figure out like how do we market this. But one of the problems that we've always had as an organization is, in fact, you said something that gives me a little PTSD. Every vendor says, you should sign up with us. It's super easy. Magic happens. You make lots of money and you don't have to worry about anything. Well, it's not really real. I don't know of any vendors that are that easy. Maybe there are some new ones. I've been out for 2 years. So I don't want to throw shade at anyone, but that's super common. Been there, done that, on the MSP side. But for us, we can actually be that simple. Like you could literally, a client needs something, you can send us an email and we can kind of take it from there if you don't want to be involved. And so, from a messaging standpoint, it's really difficult because nobody believes us, because they're like, no, nothing's that easy. Well, because we're not a traditional vendor, and to your point, MSPs of the future, in my opinion, needs to be a little bit, I know some people hate this term, a little bit more general contractor. You are the hub of the relationship. You hold that strategic direction. You hold that guidance. And then you bring in these other trusted partners to do all of these other things. Now, maybe you do some stuff. Maybe you have an amazing help desk. Maybe you are an amazing security company. Yeah, don't outsource that. You're really good at it. But all the things that, if you are honest with yourself and you're like, yeah, maybe I'm not the best at that, you should really just find a way to find a trusted partner. There's so many. I've run into companies being on the vendor side that met that like only does Intune and Azure. Like they don't touch MSP, so they're like a perfect company to go partner with to do those pieces, and they're not going to mess with your business, for your MSP side. And I really see that being the future. It's truly like partnerships and collaboration and that kind of stuff. And honestly, I think that's where like your MSP community minds really come in, is how do we make all this stuff more collaborative and educational, and not sales pitches, because the sales pitches kind of all suck. Like, anyway.
I mean, I agree with you 1,000%. And like, by the way, kind of wrap a bow on a lot of our pieces of the conversation today. I really, truly learned way more from the drive-by hallway bar conversation in almost every time, in almost every situation than I did in any breakout session, any keynote. And you know what I mean? Like, because I actually felt like I got real information rather than a dream.
Yeah.
And so I love the dream. Don't get me wrong. I really want to see the vision and agree with it. But at the same token, I need to understand what the day-to-day looks like. I want to know what the reality is so that I know what I'm walking into. So
Mm-hmm.
to that degree, Yeah, nobody wants to be sold something that never comes, right? I think to a large part, we all have been sold that, right? So I appreciate companies like yours that literally say, hey, listen, here's what the ballpark is. Let me talk to your customer. I'm not asking you to be an expert, but these solutions exist and we can get you there. Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. And quite frankly, I would say as time goes on and the Microsoft marketing budget gets bigger and bigger, because it does, at some point your customer is going to get marketed this message on, directly. And they're
Mm-hmm.
going to come to you, hopefully, and raise their hand and say, what do you know about this? Well, if the answer is you know nothing, you better have somewhere to get an answer, right? Or else they're going to move around you, right? So I like what you're doing. Yeah, definitely not traditional, kind of an upmarket kind of set of things that you work on, but you hope that your customers are growing, right? And that these things become viable for you. How do people find more information, learn more, figure out how to contact someone?
So obviously, you can go to our website, trunorthdynamics.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, easy to find. If you ever want to talk to me, my calendar link is right on my main LinkedIn profile. You can certainly just set up time. I love talking about this kind of stuff and how we can help and how we operate. But that's the easiest. LinkedIn is, I know everybody kind of hates LinkedIn, but it's also so easy and convenient. So LinkedIn is usually the best way.
Awesome. Thanks for jumping on. I really enjoyed this, right? I love people who are like, hey, I'm going to give it straight, right? No sugarcoating. It's always a good story. And I always love to get different people's opinions on different angles, right? Everybody sees the world from a different lens. So I really appreciate your feedback. And hey, listen, like hopefully moving forward into 2024, we can try and get this event thing under control. I don't know if that's realistic, but we can try.
Uh, it starts with the will. I think it has to happen. I think there's an event problem and it needs to be fixed. The question is how. I don't know. I mean, but I always say, things that are difficult are the best things because that means opportunity. So let's keep pushing and trying to do it. I think everybody wants it. So the question is, who's going to be the one that sets the trend? And I know you're trying, which is cool. I appreciate that because it doesn't seem like most are trying that hard. It's it's the veiled sales pitch rather than the true educational piece. But it seems to land. We were just at Next Gen for a Channel Company event in Houston, and part of our sponsorship we got a tech talk, and typically they're fairly technical, right? So our partner team did a non-technical tech talk and it landed amazingly well. Everybody loved it because it's not salesy, it's not pitchy, it's just how we can work together and that kind of stuff. I think people are craving this stuff. So let's go get it.
I like it. I like it a lot. Guys, this session was recorded. We're going to post it shortly on mspinitiative.com. Under sessions, it'll be in both video and podcast format. Don't hesitate to reach out. When you run, even proactively, right? Just learn what they do so that when an opportunity does come, you're ready to go. I think that's not a bad idea. Hopefully everybody's going to like be productive over the next 45 days. I know there's holidays in the middle of all of those, but the year is coming to a close very quickly. So good luck with hopefully closing out on a high note. And, we're going to keep doing these and, a couple times a week, right? As we bring people going through here. And obviously we'll take some time off for some of the holidays like Thanksgiving, Christmas coming up. Thank you for watching. We're going to be sending this out on all the wire shortly. Thank you for coming. I appreciate your time. And we'll catch you on the next one.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Have a good one. Cheers.